Hey guys. Oh, that time again. Episode 65. Sports and shorts and sorts. Man, Ren City back at it, doing the thing we do every week, covering the sports of the past week. We're throwing in a little short of our own, but like I said, episode 65. I'm your host, Ren City. Let's start this episode like we do with every episode, honoring the people that wore the jerseys that coincide with our episode number. Hopefully you're sticking with me. So our first 65 on our list, a beast of a defensive end, Alvin Bethea. In high school, he set a New Jersey state record for shot put, a record that stood for 33 years. This led to Bethea playing football with North Carolina A&T. His great play there led to the Houston Oilers selecting Bethea in the third round of the 1968 NFL Draft. His rookie season, he played a stretch of 135 straight games until he broke his arm. I guess you have to leave with that. But he was one of the best at getting to the quarterback and still holds the single-season record for sacks for the Oilers-Titans franchise. His 16 sacks in 73 is still a record that holds today, and it's crazy to think his team went 1-13 that year. But I guess those stats, most of his stats, 105 of them, are all unofficial because they weren't officially a track stat until 1982. So this was someone going back and looking at video and compiling these stats. So I mean, it's tough to say. It sucks when there's a record or a stat that they don't keep until after your career's done. But regardless, this guy, he lit it up. 2 second-team All-Pros, 8 Pro Bowl selections. After retirement, the Oilers Titans franchise honored Bethea by inducting them into their Ring of Honor. The franchise retired as number 65. His alma mater retired as 65. He was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, one of the more underrated Oilers/Titans in NFL history. For the next 65 on our list, we're going to the offensive line and talk about Gary Zimmerman. He played college football at Oregon and was named a first-team All-American as a senior. This led to the Los Angeles Express drafting him in the second round of the USFL back in 1984. He played all 17 games that season, starting at left tackle. His quarterback was future Hall of Famer Steve Young. The Express lost in the semifinals that the season and didn't make the playoffs the following, and the USFL would fold that next season. Gary Zimmerman was named a 2-time USFL All-Star and would later get named to the USFL All-Time Team. Following the fold of that league, Zimmerman found himself a Minnesota Viking after they obtained his rights from the Giants, who had drafted him in the NFL supplemental draft of USFL and CFL players. Yes, such a draft existed. During his time in Minnesota, Zimmerman was known as a great lineman, but was more known for his refusal to interact with the media. This came from a scenario earlier in his career when he made comments about offensive players on the Vikings that had gone public and caused some rift in the locker room. So from that day forward, Zimmerman's like, I'm done. Not talking to the media. And Zimmerman would leave the Vikings for the Denver Broncos, where he'd play the rest of his professional career. And upon joining the Broncos, he was the leader of this young group, and he brought the tradition of let's not talk to the media to Denver. And the tradition stuck for a full decade until the NFL created the Broncos O-line rule in 2007, requiring all NFL players to talk to the media. Not one of Marshawn Lynch's favorite rules, but talked a lot about Zimmerman's disdain for the media, and it's kind of overshadowed how good of a lineman he was. He was part of that Super Bowl 32 winning Broncos team that beat the Packers for their first Super Bowl in franchise history. And after retiring following that Super Bowl, he was there in spirit for the Super Bowl 33 winning Broncos that beat the Atlanta Falcons. Over his NFL career with the Vikings and Broncos, he was twice first-time All-Pro, 3 times second-team All-Pro, 7 Pro Bowls, and he's been honored by both teams as he was named one of the 50 greatest Vikings and inducted into the Broncos Ring of Fame. Zimmerman was also named to the NFL's 1980s and 1990s All-Decade teams. He was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, joining Reggie White, Sam Mills, Steve Young, Jim Kelly, Marv Levy, George Allen, Bill Polian, and Sam Gilman as former USFL AFL League members who are enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So it's really cool numbers on him. Sticking with that, with an offensive line, the next 65 on our list is Tom Mack. The Ohio-born Mack was son of MLB second baseman Ray Mack. Tom Mack would go on to play college football for the Michigan Wolverines, where he'd spend time at tight end, but mostly time sitting on the bench. And things would change when he changed positions to the offensive line. That transition made him a whole new player. He thrived on the offensive line, earning first team All Big Ten, second team All American, leading to the Rams selecting Mack out of 1966 NFL draft. During his rookie season, after there was an injury to the starter 5 games into the season, Max would slither his way into the lineup where he took his job, and Mack would become a fixture at the left guard position, holding that position with the team the next 13 seasons. During his career, he never missed a game due to injury, appearing in 184 straight games. During his time as a Ram, the team enjoyed a 720 winning percentage. All he did was winning division eight times and reaching 4 NFC championship games. Fortunately for Mack, though, he'd never get to that elusive Super Bowl. The closest he got was a 1974 NFC championship game against the Vikings. While down 4, the refs would score a touchdown to take a lead in the fourth quarter. However, the refs called an illegal procedure on Mack. The replay showed Mack did not move, and he's still adamant that he never did move on that play. And although he never won a Super Bowl, he put up really good numbers. 4 first-team All-Pros, 4 second-team All-Pros, 11 Pro Bowls, and after retiring, Tom Mack was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Starting with 3 Hall of Famers, our next 65 is a current player who some say might be the best tackle in the league right now. Starting offensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, Lane Johnson. He attended junior college in East Texas, Kilgore College. He played quarterback and tight end for the Kilgore Rangers before transferring to the University of Oklahoma, where Johnson's strange journey to his position continued. He'd serve as a practice squad quarterback during his redshirt season, but would transition to tight end in the fall before switching to defensive line. Injuries popped up, and the offensive line had some tryouts to see who would take the job. Johnson wowed the staff, and soon became the starting right tackle. His senior season, he moved to left tackle and earned second-team All-Big 12 honors. Before the draft, Lane Johnson went to the Senior Bowl, and stood out as one of the top performers. So much that he has been honored since then as the Senior Bowl Hall of Fame and was named to the Senior Bowl 75th anniversary team. This great performance boosted his draft stock, and the Eagles took him 4th overall in the 2013 draft. It's crazy, that transition from quarterback to 4th overall in the draft as a lineman. That's crazy. His rookie season, Lane Johnson would battle for the starting job, and then when Dennis Kelly got hurt, Johnson, he would shine. He started all the regular season games and even the playoff wildcard game, but he'd missed some time the following season as it was reported he tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. Lane Johnson would return from the suspension and continue to be one of the best tackles in the game. During his career, which has been entirely in Philadelphia, Johnson has been named to 2 first-team All-Pros, 2 second-team All-Pros, 5 Pro Bowls, and was a very important piece of the Eagles' first Super Bowl win in Super Bowl 52, where the Eagles beat the Patriots. Last year, Lane Johnson signed a contract extension to stay with the Eagles through the 2026 season. I see him retiring as an Eagle. He's a beloved figure in the city of brotherly love, and they're hungry for a Super Bowl ring, and he'd like to get one more before hanging him up. The next 65 on our list is another offensive lineman, 24-year-old, soon to be 25 on June 16th, Trey Smith. Current guard for the Kansas City Chiefs, played college football for the University of Tennessee. As a natural, started as a true freshman for 12 games, earning an All-SEC second-team nod that season. The next season, the team discovered blood clots in his lungs and ruled him out the entire next season. The following season, he moved back to guard, and he thrived, earning back-to-back first-team All-SEC nods and entered the NFL draft. But because of his injury history, he dropped all the way to the 6th round of the draft, where the Chiefs would select him 226th overall. Even with a late selection, he'd earned the starting guard position and played a fantastic rookie season, earning a spot on the all-rookie team. And to cap that season off, the Chiefs beat the Eagles in Super Bowl 57. His sophomore season, this past season, the Chiefs would again win the Super Bowl, beating the 49ers in Super Bowl 58. Not a bad start to your NFL career, 2 seasons, 2 Super Bowl rings. And we'll wrap up the NFL portion of the number 65 mentions with another guard on the offensive line, Alex Kappa of the Cincinnati Bengals. He played collegiate football at Humboldt State University in California, and much like Jane Johnson in this jersey shout-out, Kappa's stock really rose during a great performance at the Senior Bowl, leading to the Buccaneers drafting Kappa in the third round of the 2018 NFL Draft. In that process, he became Humboldt State's highest ever draft pick and the last ever draft pick, as the school no longer has a football program as of 2018. Kappa was an important piece of the Bucs offensive line, known for his great work off the field too, like supporting local restaurants and businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. And in a wildcard game against the Washington football team, he suffered a broken ankle, which put him out for the year, and he had to sit back and watch his team win Super Bowl 55 over Kansas City. He'd test free agency, where he'd sign with the Bengals, where I said he is at now. Starting every game in their season was a big part of the success they had. Kappa would pick up an ankle injury late in that postseason run, where the Bengals would fall to the Chiefs. Kappa returned from injury to start every game last season, and the Bengals are looking to improve from their 9-8 record last season. Still amazing to think they finished last in the division with a 9-8 record, but we'll leave the gridiron. We'll go to the baseball diamond, starting with current 65 on the New York Yankees, left-handed pitcher Nestor Cortes Jr. The Cuban-born Cortes Jr. has had a very interesting journey to getting where he is right now. He was drafted originally by the Yankees in the 36th round of the 2013 draft. He'd signed with the Yankees, but only played in the minor league system, leading to the Orioles selecting him in the 2017 Rule 5 draft, where with the Orioles, he'd get some time in the majors, pitching in a relief role, but he'd again join the Yankees, only remaining in the minor leagues again, and the Yankees would trade him to the Mariners, where he'd deal with some injuries, where he'd enter free agency, and guess where he'd sign? The Yankees again. He was playing in the minor leagues, but he'd finally get his chance up to play in the big leagues, and he's even earned quite a rep. Nasty Nestor and his mustache. He's done some really good pitching, and he's helped join the Yankees rotation, and he did very well, even throwing an immaculate inning against the Orioles in 2022. This all led to him making his first All-Star game last year. He's dealt with some injuries, but he seemed to have regained his health, which is big for the Yankees, considering how much they've dealt with the injuries to Garrett Cole this season, and Nestor Cortes Jr. was the opening day pitcher, so an unusual journey, a lot like some other players on this list here, but we'll continue. The next 65, right-handed pitcher for the Astros, Jose Urquidy. He signed with the Astros as an international free agent back in 2015, and he did so under the name Jose Luis Hernandez. A little bit of a switch up there. He'd pitch in the minor leagues, but have to miss 2017 season due to Tommy John surgery. Returning from injury, he'd still pitch in the minor leagues before finally getting the call up in 2019. He'd pitch well, in the 2019 series. Urquidy started for the Astros, and he would end up getting the win, becoming just the second Mexican-born pitcher to win a World Series game. Fernando Valenzuela he was the first before Urquidy. The Astros would end up losing to the Nationals in Game 7 of the 2019 series, but Urquidy would continue to pitch well and help the team to get to the 2021 series, where Urquidy would pick up another World Series win, becoming the only Mexican-born pitcher to pick up multiple World Series wins. But again, the Astros would come up short, losing to the Braves in Game 6 of the 2021 World Series. But the next season, the Astros would get back to the World Series, where they take on the Phillies. And this time, the Astros would win the series, defeating the Phillies in 6 and getting Jose Urquidy his first World Series win, and his first World Series ring, And in the process, he became just the 15th Mexican-born player to win a World Series. Unfortunately, we haven't seen much of Urquidy this season, and it's rumored he'll miss the whole season after needing a second Tommy John surgery. Hopefully, he can come back from that. The next 65 on our list is another pitcher, the Big Maple, Richmond, BC's own James Paxton. After playing for Canada at a young age, he'd go on to play for the Kentucky Wildcats, where he played really well at the college level and also killed it on the grade side, making the SEC academic honor roll every year he was at Kentucky. That great play led to the Blue Jays drafting Paxton 37th overall in the 2009 MLB draft. However, negotiations with the Blue Jays broke down over a dispute over his signing bonus, and he did not sign by the deadline. Paxton had intended to return to Kentucky for his senior season, but the Blue Jays president at the time, Paul Beeston, told the press he had been negotiating with Scott Boras instead of Paxton's family, which was a violation of the NCAA rules, and Paxton was ruled ineligible ineligible after an investigation. He sued the NCAA in an attempt to reinstate it, but lost the lawsuit and withdrew from school with just one semester shy of graduation. Such a brutal end to a college career. The following year, he was selected by the Mariners in the fourth round of the 2010 draft, and after some time in the minor leagues, Paxton got his call up to the big show. He pitched pretty well, and the following season was part of the Mariners' rotation, but an injury would shut his season down, and the following season he'd struggle to get back in the rotation. Once he did, though, he pitched some of his best baseball, going up against the team that ruined his college eligibility, the Toronto Blue Jays. He'd throw a no-hitter in 99 pitches, becoming just the second Canadian to throw a no-hitter. Dick Fowler of the Philadelphia Athletics did it back in 1945, and the Big Maple also became the first Canadian Major League pitcher to throw a no-hitter in Canada, and the first Mariner to throw a no-hitter in a road game. Paxton would get traded to the Yankees, where he had some good outings. He'd undergo spinal surgery, though, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, he wouldn't really miss any time. He'd get injured again, though, and get shut down for the season, and in the off-season, he'd sign a contract to return to Seattle, sorry. Excuse me. His stint was very brief, as he needed Tommy John surgery, and after recovering from that, he'd sign with the Red Sox, where he'd have more injury woes. And he'd struggle in the postseason and was a free agent, where he'd signed to join the LA Dodgers, where it's based on performance how much money he'll get this season. And he's kind of had a resurgence. He's been lighting it up for the Dodgers. So it's great to see the big Canadian still doing his thing in the majors, despite all the injuries he's dealt with. Our last MLB mention is the 25-year-old Jack Sawinski, the Pittsburgh Pirates outfielder, trying to find his way in the major leagues, drafted in the 15th round of the 2016 draft by the Padres. Chose to sign with the Padres and made his debut in the minor leagues, missing a season due to cancellation during the pandemic. But eventually making his MLB debut, he was traded to the Pirates in a deal involving a few players, including one to Capita Marcano, who we will hear about more in this episode. And that following season, he was named to the roster of the Pirates to avoid him getting selected in the Rule 5 draft. He'd eventually get promoted to the big leagues for the first time, making his debut with the Pirates, spent some time in the minor leagues, bouncing back and forth. He's been struggling this season, hitting under 200, and he's trying to find his way in the MLB. Hopefully his back can wake up. We'll leave the ball diamond, head to the hockey rink, starting with probably the most recognizable number 65 on our list, Erik Karlsson. The Swedish defenseman was drafted 15th overall by the Ottawa Senators in the 2008 NHL draft. After joining his first Senators cap, he'd made the roster, struggling initially, spending some time in the AHL with the Binghamton Senators, but he'd get called up again and never look back. Karlsson would develop into one of the best skating defensemen in the NHL. With the Senators, he became a fan favorite as he would dazzle the crowds, making 5 All-Star games. He'd also pick up 2 James Norris trophies for best defenseman in the league, once in 2012 and again in 2015. He'd start to deal with some injuries, though, physically and mentally. Months after Karlsson and his wife announced their pregnancy and expectance of a boy, they would then announce that their son was stillborn. That, combined with drama involving Karlsson's wife and a girlfriend of Senators teammate Mike Hoffman, where Hoffman's girlfriend was harassing Karlsson's wife by creating fake accounts and lashing out online, including comments regarding the passing of Karlsson's stillborn son. All of these issues led to the end of the Karlsson's tenure in Ottawa. The team was looking to enter a rebuild, so Karlsson was traded to the San Jose Sharks. And with the Sharks, he started to find some of his old form, signing a deal to make him the highest paid defenseman in the league. He'd make 2 more All-Star games, and in his last season with the Sharks, as well as winning his James Norris Trophy, 3rd of his career. Before this past season, Karlsson was traded to the Penguins in a 3-team deal, also involving the Canadiens. It was a decent season for Karlsson, but not anywhere near the season he had prior. Karlsson has also represented Sweden at the international stage, winning a silver medal with the World Junior team. He's also won 2 bronze medals with Sweden in the World Juniors and a silver medal from the 2014 Sochi Olympics. Now, I imagine the 34-year-old will be suiting up the Penguins next year, as they're hoping to have a bounce-back year. And our last NHL mention is Andrew Shaw, number 65, where he played with the Niagara Ice Dogs in the OHL, playing well before moving to the Owen Sound Attack. And with the Attack, he was a big part of Owen Sound winning the 2011 Memorial Cup, leading the Blackhawks drafting him in the 5th round of the 2011 NHL draft. After playing some time with the AHL affiliate Rockford Ice Hogs, he'd finally get his call up to the NHL, being a very productive forward on some very good Blackhawks teams, where he was a member of the 2013 Stanley Cup winning team that beat the Bruins in 7, as well as the 2015 team that won the Stanley Cup over the Lightning in 6. Shaw would get traded to the Canadiens in 2016 and sign a long-term deal with the club, but then he'd start to go with some difficult times with concussions. This limited his playing time in Montreal. A few seasons later, he'd go back to the Blackhawks, but he'd suffer another serious concussion, which led to him retiring from playing hockey. Not the ideal way to leave the sport, but he can hang his hat on a good NHL career. And like a lot of numbers in the 60s, the NBA has only seen the 65 for one season. George Rakovich wore the 65 for the 1950 season. It was the first season after the NBL merged with the Basketball Association of America to create the NBA. So after that season, Rakovich changed his numbers, so very brief NBA experience involving the 65. So that'll take us to the Stanley Cup. Game 1 finally came after one of the final, it took a bit, but game 1 finally came. It went down Saturday night in Florida. The home team Panthers got off to the perfect start. Less than 4 minutes into the game, their first shot on target, Florida would go up 1-0 through Carter Verhaeghe. And this was all despite Edmonton outshooting the Panthers. They were shooting them by 4 times what they had. They were outshooting them 13-4 when the Panthers would add a second. Just over 2 minutes into the second period, Evan Rodriguez would find himself wide open off a dump and chase, and his shot beat Stuart Skinner, making it 2-0 Panthers, despite only their 5th shot on net. Stuart Skinner made some big saves to keep the Oilers in it, but an E2 Lositarian empty netter would clinch the 3-0 win. But this was all about officer Sergei Bobrovsky. He made 33 saves and secured the shutout in the 3-0 win, becoming the oldest goalie in NHL history at 35 years and 262 days to open the Stanley Cup with a shutout. Hot goalies can make the difference in a playoff series, and none seem hotter than Bobrovsky. The Oilers outshot the Panthers 32-18, but it did not seem to matter. The Oilers obviously show they can play with the Panthers, and some say they look the better team, and only one stat matters, and that's the scoreline. Game 2 goes down tonight, Monday, June 10th, and the Oilers will be looking to tie the series up, going home for Game 3 on Thursday, June 13th, while the Panthers will be looking to keep the home ice advantage. So I'm expecting this to be a fun series so far. It's been off to a good start, unless you're an Oilers fan that's a little nervy. And if you remember from last episode, I have the Oilers winning this series, as I predicted earlier in the season, so I'm not giving up here yet. And there's been a lot of hate coming from the Florida media, including some outlandish remarks from some people on the Levitard show, which I love. Mainly Greg Cote saying McDavid is overrated and basically shitting on Canada. So can imagine the field day they're having today after that game 1. But I mean, the Panthers have 13 Canadians on the roster, so can't hate on Canada too much. And sure, you can call superstars overrated till they win a championship. I know it's kind of what people do. I know it's not my cup of tea, but to each their own. Until they win a championship, can you be great? I mean, I get it. But I hope they have that same energy in Florida when they talk about Jimmy Butler and all the titles he's brought to Miami. But I mentioned already Game 2 going down tonight. Game 3, Edmonton Thursday, June 13th, and Game 4, Saturday, June 15th. So by next week's episode, we should have a lot going down in the Stanley Cup Finals. We'll go from the hockey rink to the tennis court. Another major going down in the tennis world, the French Open. On the men's side, after winning an outrageous 4th-round match over Francisco Cerundolo that went 5 sets, his second 5-set match in a row, Novak Djokovic had to withdraw from the tournament before his quarterfinal match with Casper Ruud. This gave the 2-time French Open runner-up a pass to the semifinals, and this ended Djokovic's title defense, and also meant he will have to relinquish his number 1 ranking. And this all came off his 370th victory in Grand Slam play, which broke a tie between him and one of my favorite players, Roger Federer. The decision was made after an MRI showed that Djokovic had suffered a torn medial meniscus in his right knee, and this could even hurt Djokovic's chances of playing in Wimbledon. This also opened the door for current number 2 Jannik Sinner to move up to that number 1 spot. This move in the tournament opened up some doors on the men's side. In the semifinals, German Alexander Zverev would lose the first set to Denmark's Casper Ruud, but the big German reeled off 3 straight sets to take the match 3-1. Other semifinal was a thriller between Spain's Carlos Alcaraz and Italy's Yannick Sinner, the soon-to-be #1 in the world. This was a back-and-forth game that would go 5 sets, where in the fifth and deciding set, Alcaraz would hold on to win 6-3, taking the match 3-2 and advancing to the French Open final. And what a final we got with Alexander Zverev and Carlos Alcaraz. The Spaniard got the better start, winning the first set 6-3, but Zverev would bounce back and win the second, and the third set looked to be Alcaraz's. He was up big, leading 5-2 in the set, but the big German battled back, reeling off 5 straight games to win the set 7-5. Alcaraz looked like a new man to start the fourth set, winning 4 straight games to start the set until he was broken by Zverev, but didn't matter. Alcaraz would win the next 2 games, winning 6-1, and we went to a fifth and deciding set with the French Open on the line. Some big misses and double faults early in the set led by Zverev led to Carlos Alcaraz going up 2-1, and then Zverev was up love 40 in the game, looking for a break point, and it looked like he had things up to tie the game up at 2. He got the point, but the umpire looked at the spot on the court, changed the call. The replay showed the ball was out, but for some reason the French Open still does it this way with the clay. But anyway, that swung the whole game. Alcaraz would end up coming back to win the game 3-1 rather than the game being tied at 2. And from there, Alcaraz's confidence grew as Zverev's frustration grew with it. The Spaniard ended up taking the deciding set 6-2, winning his first ever French Open, securing the 3rd Grand Slam of his young career. He's already won the 2022 US Open, 2023 Wimbledon. Not bad for a 21-year-old. But man, you got to feel for Zverev. He's now 0-2 in the Grand Slam finals. He lost the French... Before losing this French Open final, he lost to Dominic Thiem in the U.S. Open back in 2020, which means no German man has won a Grand Slam since Boris Becker won the Australian Open back in '96. And that means no German man in the Open era has ever won the French Open. I emphasize man because we all know German great Steffi Graf was dominant in France, winning 6 French Open titles. And on the women's side, you had some drama as well. In the quarterfinals, Iga Swiatek easily took care of Marketa Vondrousova in straight sets. Coco Gauff dropped the first set to Ons Jabeur, but would win the next 2 very convincingly to advance to the semis. The other quarterfinals had big upsets. Mira Andreeva upset #2 in the world, Aryna Sabalenka, in 3 sets, and she would shock Sabalenka to advance to the semis. And the other match featured another upset as well. #12 in the world, Italian Jasmine Paolini beat #4 Kazakhstani Elena Ryabinka in 3 sets. Then the semis were kind of anticlimactic, with Paolini beating Andreeva in straight sets, and Iga Swiatek beat up on American Coco Gauff in straight sets. And the final was just pure Polish domination. Iga Swiatek would beat Jasmine Paolini 6-2, 6-1, winning the French Open in 69 minutes. Swiatek continuing her clay domination. She picked up her 4th French Open title in 5 years, 3rd straight French Open title. She's also become the current queen of clay. And she has 5 Grand Slams to her name, also having a U.S. Open championship on her resume. The Polish star will be looking for her first ever Wimbledon title, where the furthest she's ever made it is to the quarterfinals, which she did last year. And a reminder, Wimbledon starts July 1st. But one more mention on the women's side, American Coco Gauff, who I mentioned earlier, coming up short in the singles side, came up big on the doubles. Her and partner Czech-born Katerina Siniakova beat the Italian duo of Jasmine Paolini and Sara Errani in straight sets to win the French Open Women's Doubles Trophy. First time the pairs played together, Gauff's usual teammate Jessica Pegula was out to injury, while Siniakova has now won 8 Grand Slam doubles. Her previous titles were with former teammate and fellow Czech Barbara Krejcikova, but they parted ways after the 2023 season. Tough go for Paolini as she lost in the singles final and the doubles final. And more good news for Coco Gauff because of the results that occurred in the singles side of things. Coco Gauff has now surpassed Aryna Sabalenka to move in #2 in the world rankings, where they both sit behind French Open winner Iga Swiatek, who holds that #1 spot. A great tournament in Roland Garros. It always looks like such a fun one to go to. One day. But we'll go to Formula One. There was some racing over the weekend, and before that even went down, was announced that Esteban Ocon will be leaving Alpine at the end of the season. This comes after a rough start to the season, including a crash out with teammate Pierre Gasly at the Monaco Grand Prix. And there have been rumors of tension between Ocon and the team and his teammates throughout the year, so this fuels the drama. So we'll see what where that goes going forward. But like I said, we had racing this weekend. The Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. Former Formula One champion, Canadian racing legend Jacques Villeneuve trashed Australian driver Daniel Ricciardo for qualifying, saying, what has he really done other than that small window of success back at Red Bull, saying basically his popularity is what's keeping him in F1. So how did the Aussie respond? Only by qualifying fifth for the Canadian Grand Prix. And when asked about it after the qualifying, Danny Ricciardo said, I don't know what he said. I heard he's been talking shit, but he always does. And all this came out after it was announced that RB will be keeping Yuki Tsunoda next season, and not sure on what Danny Ricciardo will be doing next season. And the Japanese driver qualified 8th. Mercedes looked good in qualifying as George Russell took the pole position. His teammate Lewis Hamilton only qualified 7th, but behind pole getter Russell was Red Bull's Max Verstappen, and it was a weird situation where they finished with the exact same qualifying time, but the Mercedes had put the time up first and therefore got the pole position. Just behind Max was a pair of McLarens, Lando Norris followed by Piastri. Then I mentioned Daniel Ricciardo 5th. The Ferraris did not have a good qualifying, not even making it to Q3. Charles Leclerc just missing out at 11th, and teammate Carlos Sainz at 12th. And more disappointment for Red Bull with the recently extended Sergio Perez not even getting out of Q1 and starting from the 16th position in the race. And it was a wet and rainy start to the race. The Haas team looked to be a little clever as they were the only team to go with the wet tires, and it helped them as they were flying up the standings. Well, less than 10 laps into the race, the sun started to show itself. The weather looked to make a turn for the better, and the Haas started to drop. And then Ferrari started to have some engine issues. Charles Leclerc, you could hear the back and forth on the radio discussing the lack of power in their car. And as more of the rain cleared, the racing got a little more exciting. Around the 21st lap, George Russell would lose 2 spots after going off the track. First, Lando Norris would pass him to take the lead, and then Max Verstappen would pass him. From first to third in no time for Russell, not ideal for him. During the 25th lap, there'd be a yellow flag as Williams' Logan Sargent clipped the wall and found himself facing the other direction where he'd ultimately retire from the race. This series of events triggered a safety car and opened the doors for cars to pit. Lando Norris was clipping by too fast and missed the opportunity to pit while the cars behind him did go into the pit lane, leading to a fury of cars all leaving the lane at the same time. Lando would pit later but would end up losing a few spots and dropping to third. So as the safety car cleared, Max Verstappen was the race leader with Russell in second and Norris in third. Also, the gloomy clouds returned, and the rain was returning. Charles Leclerc dealt with issues all race, eventually retiring in the 42nd lap. He's had nothing but trouble since winning the Monaco Grand Prix back on May 26th. As the race continued, George Russell passed Lando to get in the second, and just as he was trying to catch Verstappen, he'd oversteer, clip a curb, costing some time and letting Lando pass him back for second place. You could hear the frustration from George Russell on the radio, and you could hear Toto Wolff trying to remind him, stay focused, Russell. But just a lap later, Ferrari would get in even more trouble. Carlos Sainz would lose control, spinning out, taking out Williams' Alex Albon in the process, leading to both Williams cars and both Ferraris not finishing the race. Joining Red Bull's Sergio Perez, whose weekend got worse as he spun out on lap 53. And things got interesting down the stretch. On the 64th lap, Russell went for it, tried to pass Oscar Piastri, and in the process there was some contact and Russell would lose some ground, getting passed by teammate Lewis Hamilton, who would go on to pass Piastri and move into third. But Russell caught up to Piastri, passing him, and then caught up to teammate Hamilton, passing him to get into third. Verstappen would hold on to win his third Montreal Grand Prix, his third in a row, putting him at 6 race victories for the season. Lando Norris would finish second. George Russell rounded out the podium. Another missed podium for Lewis Hamilton, who hasn't gotten the podium once this season. This was the first top 5 finish of the season for him, which is very unlike Lewis Hamilton in his last season with Mercedes. Yuki Tsunoda lost control late in the race and dropped 5 spots out of the points. Yuki's teammate Danny Ricciardo finished his weekend off nicely, finished in 8th. Alpine teammates seemed to get along for this one. Pierre Gasly finished 9th and Ocon in 10th. The other names in the top 10, Piastri finishing 5th, Fernando Alonso finishing 6th, and his teammate Canadian Lance Stroll finishing 7th. Be a week off from racing, but F1 will return June 23rd for the Spanish Grand Prix. And I mentioned bad news for Red Bull. More bad news as Sergio Perez was hit with a 3-place grid penalty for the next race after limping his car to the pits and leaving debris along the track in the process. Jump to footy here. Big news in London as Chelsea announced they have signed Enzo Maresca as their new manager. He signed a 5-year deal to join the Blues with an option for a 6th. The Italian had just led Leicester City to the EFL Championship title and promotion to the Premier League, and he becomes the 6th manager since Todd Boehly and the Clear Lake Capital led takeover of the club in 2022. That's crazy. 6 managers in just 2 years. And as predicted months ago, French superstar Kylian Mbappe has officially joined Real Madrid, putting his ink on paper. What is this club's reward for winning the La Liga championship and the Champions League trophy? Well, just one of the best strikers in the world, who's still only 25 years old, adding more young talent to a very dynamic Real Madrid core, who I imagine will only continue to win more games going forward. And there were some international squads getting into some last-minute training before the big tournaments coming up this month, the Euros and the Copa America. The biggest talks coming from Europe, mainly because of their outlandish tabloids. And it's all coming from England. They look pretty good in a convincing 3-0 win over Bosnia and Herzegovina, but England looked lackluster at best, and they're troubling 1-0 defeat to Iceland. Yes, the country of less than 400,000 people went into England and beat potential Euro favorites 1-0. This, of course, set off alarm bells throughout English footy, but I still think it's better to suffer the defeat now than in the actual tournament. But the press isn't sounding the same way. The pressure on these footy players grew 3 sizes that day. Other teams have looked tournament ready. Croatia beating North Macedonia 3-0 and Portugal 2-1. Spain and their young squad looked dominant too, winning 5-0 over Andorra and 5-1 over Northern Ireland. Slovakia won both their matches 4-0, beating San Marino, and then Wales. Brazil won a match over Mexico where 17-year-old Endrick, who's also Real Madrid bound, scored the game winner late in stoppage time. Canada would open the Jesse Marsh regime on a trip to the Netherlands, where Canada looked to hold their own in the first half with the Dutch side. However, the second half, it was all Netherlands. 4 second-half goals led to an easy 4-0 victory. Canada would play in France a few days later and held their own against one of the best teams in the world. Granted, France missed some big chances, including Stabstatoon Mbappe forcing a very tough save late in the game, but they couldn't find the back of the net, and Canada held on to the scoreless draw. A great result for the Canadian team, giving them a little more confidence before going into a tough Copa America group. I mentioned the Copa America a few times. That tournament won't kick off till after next week's episode, so I'll preview that then. For now, we got to talk the Euros. One of the biggest, best tournaments in the world is coming up. Germany, hosts, will be taking on Scotland, Group A, Friday, June 14th, to, like I said, kick off this tournament. The other Group A match will be played the next day between Hungary and Switzerland. Group play will start that day as well. Spain taking on Croatia. That should be a very good game, with Italy taking on Albania as well. Sunday, June 16th, Group C play will begin, with Slovenia facing off with Denmark and Serbia squaring off with England. I'll be watching that one at Winston's Pub. If you're coming to join, come on down. They also sneak a Group D match in on Sunday as well, as Poland takes on the Netherlands. Other Group D match will be played on Monday, June 17th, my sister's birthday. Shout out to Robin. Also the day I have another podcast coming out. So Group D's other match will be played Monday afternoon, with Austria taking on France. Group E's games will be played that same day, with Romania taking on Ukraine and Belgium taking on Slovakia. Group F play will begin Tuesday, June 18th, with Turkey taking on Georgia and Portugal facing off with Czechia. To advance to the group stages, countries will need to either win their group or come in second, or there's another way. The best 4th, 3rd place finishers in these groups will advance to the knockout stage. So now I have German in me, I have English in me. Come on, England! And I'm from Canada, so I always root for these teams. Now, England has not won a major tournament since the World Cup in '66, so I always root for England until they'll get one. So I'm hoping the Three Lions, they take this tournament. It's going to be tough in Germany, though. I mean, I could see Germany winning this. They're due and they're on their home field. But France, I mean, there's a lot of good talent here. The final will be taking place July 14th in Berlin. So that's my choice to win the whole tournament is England. Come on, England. But let's do some quick predictions on who I think will win the groups as who I will think get runner up. I'm not going to pick the 4 wild cards yet. But this is just who's going to win the group and who's going to finish second. That's who we got here. So Group A, I have Germany and Hungary. Group B, I have Spain and Italy. Group C, England and Serbia. Group D, France and the Netherlands. Group E, Belgium and Slovakia. And Group F, Portugal and Georgia. You've heard me talk about Georgia's striker who's been playing with Metz in Liga before they got relegated, Mikitadze, so watch him in this tournament. I'm expecting big things out of him. Like I said, Copa America, we'll preview those groups next episode. And before I jump from the footy ship here, I also have to mention some 2 tune-up games for Canada's women's team as they hooked up with Mexico on 2 games. They looked pretty good in the first game, winning 2-0 over the Mexican side, but showed some complacency in the second one in the rematch, where Mexico would equalize and that would end in a 1-1 draw. There were some good tune-up matches, but Canada's going to have to step it up if they hope to repeat as gold medal winners in this summer's Paris Olympics. Canada's rivals south of the border easily dismantled South Korea, the Americans beating them 4-0 and then 3-0. Another powerhouse, Brazil beat Jamaica 4-0 in back-to-back games. Lots of stiff competition in women's footy for the Olympic Games. Big-time tournament, and we won't have Christine Sinclair for Canada in this one as she's retired from international play, so that should be interesting. So we'll go to Major League Baseball here, where the biggest news, there has been a permanent ban on San Diego Padres, who I mentioned in a trade earlier in this episode, to Capita Marcano on Tuesday. It was said the infielder placed hundreds of bets on baseball, including wagers on the Pirates last season while he was a member of the team. The MLB's Department of Investigations found Marcano played 387 bets, including 231 MLB-related bets through a legal sports book in 2022 and 23. Also that he bet more than $150,000 on baseball, including $87,000 on MLB-related bets. He placed 25 bets on Pirates games last season while a member of a club. All those wagers occurred while he suffered a season-ending injury in 2023, but it's believed the 24-year-old is the first major leaguer to receive a permanent ban for gambling on baseball since MLB career hits leader Pete Rose agreed to a lifetime ban in 1989 for his betting on Cincinnati Reds as a player and manager. 4 other players were suspended for their involvement with betting, each of them picking up a 1-year suspension. Oakland Athletics pitcher Michael Kelly, Padres minor leaguer Jay Groom, Phillies minor leaguer Jose Rodriguez, Arizona Diamondbacks minor leaguer Andrew Sanfranc, and the investigation found those 4 all made their wagers while in the minor leagues. And this also makes you wonder about the whole Shohei Ohtani and interpreter thing. What is going on with betting in baseball? The segment has been brought to you by FanDuel. I'm just joking, obviously, but the hypocrisy of betting in sports has become laughable. It's crazy. This is ruining people's lives, and they have the fine print saying if you have a problem, call this number for gambling addiction. I mean, that covers it. But it's crazy how many people are betting their life savings away, or how many athletes are throwing away everything they worked hard for just for a few bets. It's crazy, but it's always there. It's right there. I don't know what's going to happen with us going forward, but it's shitty. Lifetime bans are not a good thing. But we'll go to some games that are actually being played, starting with the Toronto Blue Jays. They were feeling good about themselves as they were set to host the Orioles, and I must admit, the way the series started, I was not feeling too confident. First, the Orioles got to Kevin Gausman eventually and took Game 1. They then dismantled the pitching by committee group in Game 2, and everyone was thinking, is this going to be a sweep? But in Game 3, we saw some good pitching by Jose Barrios and some clutch hitting by the Jays. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa hit a walk-off single to give the Jays a 3-2 win. Then in Game 4, the Jays built up an early lead and held it off through some nice pitching by Yusei Kikuchi. The Orioles almost came back, though, scoring 2 runs in the 8th and 2 more in the 9th. But the Jays held on and split the series with the Orioles. So anytime you can split a series with a team like Baltimore, that's almost like a win. The Jays would follow that series up by going out west and playing 3 games against the Oakland Athletics. Chris Bassett returned to his old stomping grounds to pitch in Game 1, and he pitched well, going 8 innings strong, striking out 7, only giving up 1 run. And when he was leaving the field, you could see him pick up dirt near the mound. Chris Bassett had some of his most successful seasons in his major league career with the A's, and could be the last time he'll ever pitch in that stadium before the team works on its whole relocation path to Las Vegas. So it was a touching moment there, but the moment would get ruined in the bottom of the ninth with the game tied at 1. J.J. Bleday would hit a walk-off home run to give the Athletics a 2-1 win. In Game 2, the Jays played with a pissed-off attitude, and it translated well on the diamond. Kevin Gausman pitching a gem, going the distance, and picking up 10 strikeouts while only giving up 5 hits and no runs. That combined with some good hitting led to an easy 7-0 win for the Jays. The rubber match went down on Sunday, and it had all kinds of drama. The Jays started Bowden Franson, but went with a pitcher-by-committee approach again. Mitch Spence gave up a 2-run hit to Isaiah Kiner-Falefa to give the Jays the lead in the second inning, but he was solid from thereafter. And after the A's got a solo home run by Brent Rooker in the 6th, and another 2 runs in the 7th, they had a lead going into the 8th. Davis Schneider would tie the game up with a sacrifice fly, and this game would need extra innings. The top of the 10th, more clutch hitting from Isaiah Kiner-Falefa as he would smack a bases-loaded double that brought 3 runs home and made it 6-3 Jays. And with the Jays still hitting, we'd see an outrageous play you'd never see. A foul ball for Schneider looked to get caught by A's first baseman Tyler Soderstrom, but as he was coming under the ball to catch it, Blue Jays pitcher, who hasn't even pitched in the entire series, Husei Kikuchi, was out of the dugout and laid the hit on Soderstrom. It looked ridiculous. Like, there's no reason Kikuchi should even be on the field. In the NFL or CFL, that would definitely be called pass interference. And after a gathering of the umpires, they'd call interference and call Schneider out. It was super insane to see. Like, I missed it live, but I got to rewatch it. I'm like, what is going on? At least Kikuchi can fall back on his defensive safety position if needed. The bottom of the 10th, the A's would get a run back, but it wasn't enough. The Jays held on for the win and won the series 2-1. So it showed some real perseverance there. The Jays got some interleague play starting today as they go in Milwaukee to take on the Brewers in a 3-game stand. That should be tough. The NL Central leading club have been playing pretty well. And then the Jays return home, and things don't get any easier as they host the American League Central leading Cleveland Guardians in a 3-game series. So should be tough for the Jays up in this upcoming week, but if they can use some of the positives coming off this past week, hopefully they fare well. And all this Jays talk has to make us have a gander at the American League East. And guess who's not in the basement anymore? That's right. The Toronto Blue Jays have a 1-game advantage over new basement dwellers, the Tampa Bay Rays. The Jays are only half a game back of the Red Sox in the division, but the New York Yankees are still atop this division, have a 2.5-game lead over the Orioles. The Orioles made up some ground by sweeping the Rays and having the Yankees lose 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers. But the gap is pretty large from second to third place. The Orioles are now 12.5 games above them and the Red Sox in the division, but the AL East, one of the toughest divisions in baseball, and there could be plenty more shuffling to go throughout the year, but I don't know if anyone's going to usurp those 2 teams at the top. We go to the American League Central. I mentioned how the Jays have a 3-game series later in this week with the AL Central leading Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians have got some interleague play of their own with the Reds meeting up with them before their battle with the Jays, and just a few games back of the Guardians are the Kansas City Royals, who are still playing well this season, but have a tough 4-game series coming up with the Yankees. The Minnesota Twins are just above 500, while the Detroit Tigers are just below it. The Chicago White Sox ended their 14-game losing streak with a 7-2 win over the Red Sox, and they even went on to win the next game against the Sox for a very rare 2-game winning streak in what's been a very disappointing season for the Chicago White Sox. Wrapping up the American League, we go to the AL West, with the Mariners lead the division as still the only team above 500. The Rangers are 5 games back of the Mariners, and the Astros just are behind the Rangers, while the basement-dwelling Los Angeles Angels are all tied up with the Oakland Athletics, and that's not a basement party you want to be invited to. Going to the National League, I'll start with the NL East. The Philadelphia Phillies have increased their lead in the division, now have a 9-game gap over the injury-riddled Atlanta Braves. The Phillies were part of a cool series going down in London, England. They took on the New York Mets. The Phillies easily took the first game, but the second game was much closer and had a dramatic end to it. The Mets scored 3 runs in the top of the 9th, and they take the lead. And with Castellanos at the plate for the Phillies, the Mets were trying to just end this game. Castellano broke his bat on a hit that barely fell in the plate. Catcher Luis Torrens would touch home for a force out, throw it to first, got the rare double play to win 6-5. What a win for the Mets, and what's been a very disappointing season for them otherwise. They've been struggling. They're just behind the Washington Nationals in the division. The Nationals are 15 games back of the Phillies, and the Mets are 16 and a half back of the Phillies as well. The Miami Marlins reside in the NL East basement with only 22 wins on the season. Just only team with less wins than them are the woeful Chicago White Sox. Going to the NL Central, I mentioned how the Brewers are still leading their division. They've been looking good, other than that 3-game sweep they suffered to the Phillies last week. But this team can't get complacent. I mentioned they hosted the Blue Jays, and if they lose that series, they'll have teams nipping at their heels. Behind the Brewers in the division, 6.5 games back, is a 3-way tie for second place. The on-fire Cincinnati Reds, winners of 7 of their last 8, have moved up the standings. The team that broke that 7-game winning streak, the Chicago Cubs, are right there with them. And the St. Louis Cardinals, who were just awful to start the years, have really found their bearings. And the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are in last place, are just half a game back of that trio. So the NL Central looking perhaps like one of the best divisions in baseball this year. Which brings us to the NL West, a nice little segue from the Pirates to the Dodgers. The Dodgers are still leading this division. They just won 2 out of 3 in the Bronx over the Yankees. A lot of eyes were on those two teams, but earlier in the week, all eyes were on a matchup of individuals. We got to witness the first Major League Baseball battle of sensational Pirates rookie Paul Skeens and MVP of the league Shohei Ohtani. In the first deal, Skeens would struck out Ohtani with multiple pitches hitting triple digits. But later on, Ohtani got his revenge, taking the youngster yard for a home run. Skeens could not help but grin at the monster hit by Japanese superstar Ohtani. The Dodgers weren't too pleased to lose 2 out of 3 to the Pirates, but made up for it against the Yankees, like I said, winning 2 of 3. The Dodgers have a very winnable series against the Texas Rangers coming up, and they follow that up by hosting the Kansas City Royals, which could be a tough one. The Padres, Giants, and Diamondbacks are all close to each other in the standings, but still very far back of the Dodgers. Colorado Rockies still rocking it in the basement in the NL West. And voting for the MLB All-Star Game has begun as well. So if you want to get out there and try and get your favorites into the Mid-Season Classic, the time is now. That game goes down next month, or Tuesday, July 16th in Arlington, Texas. Sorry. The NFL, I know the NFL is still far away, but there's some news we got to announce here. Minnesota Vikings and wide receiver Justin Jefferson agreed to a 4-year, $140 million contract extension that includes $110 million guaranteed. The deal not only made Jefferson the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, but the highest paid non-quarterback. Some sad news coming out of Cowboy country as former Dallas Cowboy legend, offensive lineman, Hall of Famer Larry Allen passed away at the age of 52 while on vacation in Mexico with his family. Far too young to be gone. That's such a buzzkill. Superstar Christian McCaffrey and the San Francisco 49ers have reached a 2-year, $38 million extension. Former All-Pro center highlighted just a few episodes ago in episode 63, Corey Linsley has announced his retirement following the release from the Chargers. He'll always be a Green Bay Packer in my eyes. And some strange news, New York Giants tight end Darren Waller has informed the team on his plans to retire. The 2020 Pro Bowler has been all over the news over the last year, but it hasn't all been good or related to football. His performance on the field has declined since his Pro Bowl season. He was in the news for getting married to WNBA All-Star Kelsey Plum, but the couple divorced after a little over a year of marriage, and from that point on, Waller has put efforts into becoming a successful rapper, and he appears to have given up on football, calling it a professional career after 8 seasons in the league. I mean, he's only 31 years old in case this rap thing doesn't pan out, but what a buzzkill. You know, I had this guy out on my fantasy teams. I mean, he's gone. And if you want to check out his new single, Who Knew, you can find it on YouTube. I gave it a listen, watch the video. It's interesting, you know. People might like it. I don't know. Not my cup of tea. I imagine his former teammates are probably laughing it up, wondering, what is this guy doing? And I imagine Kelsey Plum and her teammates in the Las Vegas Aces locker room are probably thinking the same thing. Yeah, but so a football league that just started this past week, the CFL, started off with the Alouettes going in the Winnipeg and beating up on the Bombers 27-12. Former Rough Rider Cody Fajardo looked really good, especially his connection with Tyson Philpott, who finished with 10 catches, 141s, and 2 touchdowns, including a 76-yard touchdown bomb off a flea flicker from Fajardo. The Tiger Cats went on the road to take on the Calgary Stampeders. Jake Meyer had a very efficient game, and the Stamps would jump out to an early lead. Former Stampeder Bo Levi Mitchell would try to get the Tiger Cats late with a nice game, fourth quarter surge, but it was too little too late, and the Stampeders won their home opener 32-24. Big game in our neck of the woods as the Saskatchewan Roughriders went on the road to open their season against the Edmonton Elks. During the game, you had nice punt returns for touchdowns from both teams, but both of them were taken away due to penalties. It was such exciting plays you wouldn't expect to see not end in points, but Edmonton had a lead and things weren't looking too great for the Riders. New head coach Corey Mace on his debut. Lots of bad penalties for the Riders, and they were going into the fourth quarter down 18-8. But the Riders, they stood up for their new coach. Trevor Harris found Sean Bain Jr. for his second TD of the game. The Riders' defense stood up, forcing a fumble and recovery, which led to a rushing touchdown for newcomer A.J. Ouellette on his Riders' debut. And a strip sack led to another Rider fumble recovery. And late in the game, Trevor Harris put on a drive, finding Sean Bain Jr. for his third touchdown of the game. He's going to be something to watch this season. That last one put the Riders up for good, and they won 29-21 in Edmonton. Big win for Saskatchewan. Like I said, this team's giving some hope to province that hasn't had a lot regarding their football team in the past few seasons. The finale of the weekend was in Toronto with the Argonauts hosting the BC Lions. In the first half, the Lions got hot. Looked like they were going to run away with things, but the Argos fought back, snagged the lead, and would hold on to win 35-27 in their home opener. In the PGA, Scotty Scheffler held on to win the Memorial Tournament at Merrifield Village Golf Club in Ohio. Fifth win of the PGA season for the number one ranked golfer in the world. Canadian Adam Hadwin was in the contention and finished third in the tournament, but his final round didn't help him out in that one. I got to mention women's basketball quick here. I know I have another show where I talk basketball, but Team USA announced their roster and no Caitlin Clark on the team. But to me, the biggest snub on this team is Arike Ogbungawale. Still one of my favorite players to watch, and I don't know, only just second in the league in scoring. Chelsea Gray, she's still out from that injury from last season's finals, and she's coming back off. I thought maybe Arike could sneak in, but it's all been about Caitlin Clark, obviously, and she had to face the media, and she said, and accurately so, the USA Olympic team is one of the hardest teams to make in the world, and she'll be cheering them on as they go. Seem to have all the right answers for the media as they're trying to divide more people, and the media / new toxic fans have really caused a ruckus in the WNBA, but I don't know. He's a rookie coming in, struggling a bit in the league. I know you want to throw her out there for exposure, but many veterans on this USA team were worried that Caitlin Clark fans would react negatively to her not getting sufficient playing time. I mean, she shouldn't start over these people that have paid their dues, but yeah, people are crazy and they like to yell about shit, even though I don't necessarily think it's right to be yelled about. Caitlin Clark will have many chances to perform with the USA national team. This won't be her chance. I mean, I can understand her expanding the game by just having her out there, but she wouldn't be out there the whole time. USA is going there to win. This isn't an all-star game. But we'll see what happens. I guess Caitlin Clark's already said to her coach, this is awoken a beast. So this is really intriguing for the WNBA going forward the rest of the season. But if you want more WNBA talk, tune in to my weekly basketball recaps. It was NBA. It's WNBA in there too. I'll be dropping another episode later this week, so tune in for that. The WNBA has been bumping this season. I promoted it hard last season, and it's been a nice segue into this season. And for this week's short, it's almost like a public service announcement per se. Last Monday, my wife and I were awoken around 2 a.m. We could hear shit going down at the convenience store nearby. I mean, it's not that far from us. We sometimes have the window open. This sounded intense. Here's some riffraff, some scattering, a dog barking. Suddenly, our whole house was lit up with red and blue. It's like, what is going on over there? Ambulances, polices, fire truck, everything. We're both kind of police email nerds. My wife and I subscribe to these from the Stabstatoon Police Service where they send them up. So we're always up to date on what's going down in the city. I mean, it's kind of scary because a lot of shit goes down in this city. And the next morning we saw the whole area is caution taped off. Not a good look. Later in the day, boom, we got our police email. 10th homicide of the year. I'm like, holy shit, so did we just potentially hear someone's last conversations? That messed us up a bit. Like, we didn't hear any foul play going down, but we knew enough was going down. And then there were these emails saying, check your yard for a knife, like the weapon. We're like, what is going on in this neighborhood? This city's gone nuts, and I guess the victim of this unfortunate incident. They were on social media saying they're coming to town. Anyone's looking for drugs. Like, I don't know, illegal drug advertising probably doesn't help. I mean, it's not good to lose your life. Obviously, it's a sad thing, but yeah, I have a folder in my email for police emails. I keep track of some of this stuff, and shit is getting wild. Stabbings, unlawful confinements, WTF. So just if you see groups on bikes, avoid them. Unless you're in a cycling club or something, stay away from that shit. It's not just our neck of the woods either. Other parts of the city, people getting attacked on buses, assaulted on Broadway. Like, what is going on? You got to be like a puck carrier going across the middle of the ice right now. Keep your head on a swivel. You know, we have nice weather out there. Saskatoon's beautiful this time of the year, but you got to be careful out of there. Like, I heard Winnipeg, you know, it's known for the Winnipeg handshake, and now Saskatchewan, we just want to be better than Winnipeg and become the stab capital, I guess. Not cool, but we got a provincial election coming up this fall. Get out there, see if you can make a difference. We have so many factors going into this election, and I won't get into that. I'm not a political expert, but there's lots to be looking at. So I keep my eyes on sports lots, but don't be afraid to look out there. The world's a gross place right now with the genocide going on in Palestine that no one seems to care about. The people that do are trying, and I applaud them. I wish I could do more too. I try here and there, but it never seems enough. But we're doing our best, and that's what we can try. Just do your best and try to do right, which seems hard, but hey, this is a sports show. We're doing what we can here. This is Ren City with episode 65 in the books. 65 usually means retirement, but no retirement here. We're going to keep on rolling, baby, as Fred Durst would say. Or maybe Fred Durst is a good place to bring the episode to the end. We got Stanley Cup Finals continuing tonight. Make sure you tune in. We got NBA Finals shifting back to Dallas, which I talk more about on my WNBA NBA recaps. Tune into that. They can be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the whole 9 yards. But like I said, thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate it. Ren City out.